Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by the CEO and founder of Effective Solutions, Kevin King. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm
I
well. How
am
about you, Jay?
fantastic. Long weekend ahead of us, so always. Well, the
Right.
kids will be home, so it's it's a mixed bag. Where?
It's a really long weekend.
We caught up a little bit beforehand. You're from around this area, so let's just start at the beginning, man. Where did you grow up? Where'd you go to school, and that sort of thing?
Sure. I grew up in Bucks County. Went to Castle Rock grade school, and then for high school went to Holy Ghost, so that all boys Catholic school, which is in Northeast Philadelphia. Uh, After high school, went to college. Went to American University, and that's actually where I started business. I started Effective when I was a junior in college. It was quite some time ago, about 25 years ago, something like 26 years ago. The web was new, if you
Mm-hmm.
can believe that. It was a thing getting started, and that's kind of the genesis of my entrepreneurial beginnings. Was
Where
right
is
there in
American
college,
University? Okay.
in D.C., right
Okay.
outside of
And what'd you go to
Washington,
school
D.C.
there for?
So, well, like most, I kind of switched around a little bit. I think I started as like a psychology major, but I think it was sophomore year is when I started. I had always been into technology and programming, and then I think it was in between my sophomore and junior year. I essentially carved out like my own major that was a combination of business and specifically entrepreneurship and MIS, like
Mm-hmm.
information systems.
And when did you kind of get the bug to start your own business?
Uh, I think growing up, I was kind of always a bit of like if we had magazine drives and things, any chance I had to kind of go out and do something and hustle a little bit in my neighborhood, that was always kind of there. What really struck me though was when I was in college, the we had AOL all
Mm-hmm.
through high school, and or online. People got on the internet, but it was really in 1990. So this was 1995, and people were just starting to create websites. There was a group of people in at American that I was friendly with, and I know they had started a business. They had kind of pitched to do some work um, for some local companies, like consulting businesses, and they built their websites. And I think the idea then is really that's really what kind of ignited it. And so it was in between um, my sophomore and junior year while at school. I was lifeguarding down the shore, like the Jersey Shore, and a good friend of mine that I grew up with down there was a programmer. So he and I did not go to college together, but he was also, kind of bitten by the bug, and specifically with the idea of like building websites. So he and I kind of got to talking, and we decided like let's give it a shot. So it was right there. So when I was kind of manning the lifeguard stand, every break I could get, I was running down and like calling local businesses and seeing if we could kind of do a little
And
presentation.
that's
And so
that's that's a fantastic start. Do you remember who was your first customer?
you know, so I could lie and tell you something really. It was a group, so it happened kind of quickly. So I think the first customer may have been Heritage Surf and Sport, which was like a small chain of surf shops that's in like Sea Isle City,
Mm-hmm.
Ocean City. Um, but we did the website for Heritage, but at the same time I was calling on all the real estate, the real estate agencies, and that was kind of the first real like
Right.
niche with traction. So we went from, calling on like one or two of those to every time we went to one and kind of gave the presentation, it was very much like keeping up with the Joneses in that little industry. So it was kind of a natural intro to kind of the
Mm-hmm.
next one down the street, and there are a lot of
Right.
agencies. So I think that the first real customer base were maybe 5 to 10 of those
And
real
how
estate
long did
agencies.
you kind of keep that niche, or is that something you still do today? Like, how long did you ride that wave?
So I like that. I like that pun. Very down the shore. Um, So I think for about 3 or 4 years, so that was summer going into between sophomore and junior year, we kind of quickly got most of the larger real estate agencies in like the surrounding towns. And we kind of hooked up with a guy who was a software developer who had built all of the rental platforms for, just about everybody in the surrounding like 4 or 5, island towns. And he was doing websites, but differently. He was very much a programmer. We kind of had like an aesthetic, like we were design oriented. I was in school for marketing. Really kind of looked at it as like a branding platform. But we were also really technical. My partner at the time was he's still a programmer. He's still like a very kind of all about just ones and zeros. So we built the first database-driven websites that let these real estate agencies add their sales inventory. And this other software, the guy who owned the business down there had built a pretty sophisticated rental system that tracked all their inventory. And we were able to kind of connect it. The websites he was building were they looked like,
Right.
he was programming. So we kind of hooked up, we started doing them in collaboration with him. So we did that. We did, the following year, I came back down and kind of just focused on that. And I did it a little bit while still at school, but it was a seasonal business. So it worked out nicely. So when I was at school, I could kind of scale it back a little bit. And then after school, I moved back to the shore for about a year. So we were there kind of essentially finishing out a lot of the sites that we had done for these agencies. And I think we were there for about another year after that. And eventually it became, I think we kind of saturated what we were going to do there. And we kind of decided that we could, maybe branch off and do other businesses. So we actually moved back up here to Manio. And we got like a loft with put the office up there. And then we started focusing on like financial services.
So, 26 years is a long time in business. So you guys have obviously been doing things right along the way. How many major pivots do you think you've made along the way?
Many. Many. So, we started off, we were doing all these real estate agencies. I would say probably half a dozen major pivots. So like we did the real estate agencies and kind of essentially covered like pretty much all of the ones in the surrounding few towns. And but we were technical, and it was a weird place because we were where we could get the most traction. So if you walked into a small business and you were 22, it's kind of expected. Like a small business would expect a kid that was going to be doing their website. It's all very new. But what was really difficult was cracking into like larger businesses that that understood branding. They had a brand. They had they really had a larger scale, already fully scaled businesses. And that kind of area was really more dominated by like ad agencies. So when we moved to Philadelphia, I was calling on I still got some clients that were in financial services, but they were smaller businesses. And then we got an opportunity at SEI Investments, which is like a large mutual fund complex located out here, Philadelphia. And it wasn't the web design aspect; it was really nuts and bolts like programming. They asked us, they kind of brought us into a conference room, and said, "Look, we've got 5,000 registered investment advisors, and they come into our website. They try to get like documents to give. They resell the SEI product, and they asked us to build something so that they could easily customize a proposal based on the SEI product, but with the branding of each of these registered investment advisors. And we built the first proposal system. It was like an intranet, extranet software, very technical. And that was kind of, we were still doing web design, but that was the first real pivot, because it was really nuts and bolts. It was software oriented, and it gave us kind of that it was kind of a good spot for us to enter, because we were young, so we didn't have kind of the branding chops that I think a lot of other companies were looking for just kind of the web design stuff. So being younger and just technical still seemed appropriate in a similar way. And through that, though, we started meeting some of the agencies, like through some of the relationships, the banks that we were doing. So we also started doing kind of larger banks that were similarly packaging their products with SEIs. We kind of were introduced to them, and we started building similar things. And I think over that, 2 or 3 year period, we started doing work for the agencies, where we became kind of like a private label digital arm for several agencies. So that was probably like the third, the second real pivot. Got 2 down. And that was helpful because then, that was how we really started to carve out a niche that allowed us to do the branding and the marketing aspect of it. And then we kind of merged with one of those. So at some point, a few years later, in this is all from 96 to 2001. At some point around 2000, I think we merged with an ad agency, where it was kind of our shop and theirs, and we started doing all of their client, all of their work. We did that for a while, and at the same time, we also had some products that were still specialized in those proposal systems. So we did that for a while, and then we kind of split off, and we started private labeling for maybe another half dozen agencies.
Wow! So you did you figured out what worked at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of pivoting. A lot of. What did somebody say the other day? So they didn't like the word pivot. I think they said transform. I think was the way that they used it. But they do digital transformation, so I think that's why I said that. Where does that leave you guys today? What do you focus on today for your clients?
So that kind of last transition from there, we did that work for for a lot of agencies, and that was going really well. We got every time we met with an agency, we really kind of made a good relationship, and we'd start to do the work. But at some point, kind of decided that we were better off serving our clients more directly, and that's really where we landed. So that's where everything that we had kind of learned from being pretty a really technical shop and doing it for larger corporations, financial services. And then we had, a good period of time where we were now opening it up to a portfolio of clients that were a lot of Fortune 500 businesses, where we were on the branding side. So coming out of kind of those several transformations, let's say, kind of gave us an opportunity to really provide all of the above, but in a different, I would say, a different kind of service model than a typical ad agency. A lot of agencies were trying to transform their business a little bit, but without having that direct expertise inside the technical stuff, whereas we kind of came into it the reverse, really technical with an understanding of the business aspects and marketing. And so now it's a pretty well-rounded, offering. And our model is really based on creating websites, but really managing, becoming that digital arm for our clients. Whether it's a small business or a large publicly traded business, we try to find a match that's going to really augment their internal resources, so they can think of us as a natural extension of what they have internally.
And how big are you guys today? How many employees?
So we're lean and mean. The pandemic really did a number on a lot of different parts of our business. So we've got a few full-time people, and then we've had a let's say, network of maybe a dozen contractors that we've really, over 10, 15 years, just, from here back, we've worked with for a really long time. And I think, everybody started working remotely. It really made it difficult to bring people into an office and full time. But at the same time, I think people got more accustomed to, this video call. I think the Zoom thing has been really helpful, because otherwise, when we were with the different agencies, we would have a lot of people in the office, and I was really adamant about having everybody inside the same building because I think it's crucial for communication. But today, people are accustomed that, there's not a lot of choice
Right.
in that matter. With video calls, it is easier. I think that bridges some of the gaps in communication, to be able to make eye contact and see people.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I started working fully remote, and I base everything off of my kids' ages. That's how I try to keep track of time. But my daughter was just born, and she just turned 7, so it was kind of pre all that stuff. So when everybody was kind of freaking out about the big shift, I was like, this is where it's at, man. That's how I built my business, was being fully remote. So we didn't have that big transition, but I know being parts of other organizations that had to make that shift, it could be pretty challenging.
Yeah.
So if if you could take everything that you've learned over your many pivots or transformations or whatever you want to call it, and you had to start your business over again tomorrow, what would be step one?
Step one would be to really assess the market. Though I had done a lot of pivots, I think the thing that has consistently worked is really taking a position of being extremely inquisitive and really understanding the people that I want to that we do our work for. I think taking a step back, combining it with obviously you have to love what you do. So I think that's pretty integral to any success. Is if you really have a passion for it, and then figuring out a way that matches where the demand is, and then getting inquisitive, asking a lot of questions.
That's a great answer. Let's switch gears a bit. You look like a very healthy guy. You look, great for having run a company for 26 years. I can tell you, I've seen people who've run companies for 2 years who look like, they're 100 years older. So you must be doing something. What are three kind of things, health-wise? Obviously drinking water is one of them. What are three? Stay hydrated.
Hydration.
What are three things you do to kind of increase your health and longevity?
I think high stress is always helpful.
Big time. So I have 5 kids. I agree.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I'm only kidding. I think getting yourself accustomed to high stress and not feeling it, I think, is helpful. I appreciate you say I'm in great shape. I feel like I'm in the worst shape of my life. No. I think to be fair, I feel as though I've said that every 6 months, and I meant it. I think last summer I was in work, possibly work, but I think just staying active. I do stay hydrated. Kidding aside, I do always we have water everywhere. I want to make sure that everybody's. I really think lots of water is important, and just staying active. Move. I have a standing desk. I love my standing desk. I'm always adjusting that. I like to stay on my feet. And just putting yourself generally in positions that make you feel a little uncomfortable, I think is something that is helpful, both, staying in shape and just for business.
No, I like that. I always feel like if I'm too comfortable, I'm in the wrong place. So, being generally comfortable with being uncomfortable is a great one. All right, so let's do the mystery question. And I know now that people are actually starting to listen to this a little bit, they're tired of hearing this spiel. But eventually, somebody will listen to the mystery question beforehand, and it won't be a mystery anymore. And I have to change it. But what would you do? Anything on Earth, physical, altruistic, whatever you want to do. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
I knew I couldn't fail. I would I would figure out how to usher in a really safe ecosystem for artificial intelligence.
I love it.
I think that is a real challenge, real concern. I don't want to ring any alarms, but I think what we're looking at now, and it's a pretty significant shift. Not just in like my industry, your industry, but
Yeah.
everything.
Now, do you mean
And
that
I,
from the sense? And I asked a guy who's like almost I would call like a forefather to some of this MML and language stuff a couple weeks ago. Um, do you mean that from a being in the wrong hands perspective, or more of a sentience kind of perspective? Like, what are you when you say? And what are your thoughts behind that?
well, all of the above. I mean, without getting too weird and philosophical, I think in terms of safety and it getting into the wrong hands, for sure, I think that's
Mm-hmm.
more of an immediate risk. I think in terms of kind of a soft landing in the economy for the impact it's going to have that we'll be looking at over the next,
Mm-hmm.
3 to 5 years, um, and to the extent you want to debate sentience and consciousness, yeah, I think maybe having an approach that is fairly uniform and has some parameters for compassion and empathy, whether it's us and the possibility of a burgeoning intelligence, or the notion of kind of, imprinting a sense of compassion and empathy to our overlords.
And I think education too,
Kidding.
right? That's the only other one that I like. I feel like if people can just like
Yeah.
AI their way through everything, there's got to be an impact down the line, right? Like all the kids that are just gonna use it to write all the papers and do all the homework. Like it's got to come out somewhere.
I hear you. And the first time I used ChatGPT in like November, when it was given that release in November, I have a couple in-laws that are like teachers. Like the same day I was looking at it, I had a couple nephews and nieces over the house, and they came, the parents came over to pick them up, and I was explaining like, I don't know if you've seen this, and I don't know if it was right or wrong. I pulled out my phone and showed it to their, her kids, and she's like, man, this is, how do you stop? How do you? I don't know. How do you? They were, my niece and nephew were, they were saying like they were basically asking prompts for like papers they were looking at doing, and sure enough, and that was GPT 3.5, and 4.0 is even more fluid and fluent and like less
Yeah,
rapid. So yeah.
yeah. I have a senior in high school, and he was already starting to experiment. I'll just leave it there. I was, I was not, as a dad who hopes he goes on to do great things. Like, you can't rely on it's crutches in life. If you have too many crutches, like whatever it is, like you end up being I don't say weaker person, but you definitely define more character without those crutches sometimes.
Well, what do you think? I mean, how do you, as somebody that's more
I
hands-on
don't.
in
I
that kind
think
of
just the
realm?
detection mechanisms. I think there's never going to be a universal. There's always going to be a branch of some open source something that is going to not be locked down
Mm-hmm.
like the mainstream version of GPT, right? Somebody's going to get it, they're going to spin it
Mm-hmm.
off, they're not going to follow the same protocols, they're not going to embed the things in it that let people know that it's generated with AI. There's always going to be that
Right.
stuff, so I think
Right.
detection mechanisms are probably going to be it's going to be a cat and mouse game forever. I don't know. I do see that as being a little bit of the Pandora's box, because you're never really going to be able to stay ahead of the next iteration of it. There's always going to be something next that's going to be out there. So I don't know, man. I mean, I've got a lot of younger kids that are coming up, and it'd be very interesting to see how it plays out, and with school, and how they handle it, and the
Yeah.
teachers and all that stuff.
On the other end of it, though, maybe it helps kind of usher in some I don't know. I mean, we use it every now and then. Like once a week, we'll ask GPT to like write a homepage. And it's just shocking what it does do. Whether it really comes back as like a fluid, as something like really on point, it doesn't. But it's close. But generally, it's helpful in the regard that if you understand the broader concepts, it's not going to like finish a
Right.
thing for you. So it kind of helps get things going, and maybe, I don't know, maybe in some respect, even just from a writing, as if you were in high school, I don't know if it would be helpful to assist and create better writing.
I think there's definitely the upsides to it. It's just managing it with the downsides. But I think my dog is letting me know it's time to go. But this has been great, man. It was fantastic. How do people
Yeah.
find you? How do they find Kevin? How do they find Effective Solutions?
So eisolutions.com is our website. I mean, if you just look Effective Internet Solutions, on LinkedIn, the World Wide Web, as they call it. I don't know.
I don't
They
know.
still call it that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we're definitely dating ourselves if we call it the World Wide Web. But yes, I remember the dial-up days very well that my kids have no idea about. I was trying to explain to my son like the anti-shock protection for the Discmans they used to have. I'm like, so you had to have this button that you would push so like it wouldn't skip as much. He's like, how does that work? I'm like, I had no idea. It was like magic, dude. It just like you would hit it and like sometimes it would skip less. I don't know, but all right, man. Well,
Right.
this was great. Thanks for hopping on. Enjoy your long weekend, and we'll catch up soon. All right. Thanks, Kevin. See you, man.
Got it. CJ. Thank you.